Hello, friends. Welcome back to the cabin. My name is Tim Martin with Covenant Creation on YouTube. Uh, what a conference that was. Most of you already know we're in the follow-up mode, rest and relaxation mode of wrapping up the Montana Wild Conference from last month. Lots of great things are going on. I've got some announcements today toward the end that I'll get to, but I just want to do a quick video about some details that are flowing out of that conference event, and then also maybe some plans. But I assume everybody's rested up a little bit between the killer hikes. I heard that there were some really killer hikes in there over the 5 days of the conference, and I think there were some that went to the Frontier Days celebration in Whitehall, Montana, our big party, our big annual party in town. I think there was a rodeo involved and lots of other stuff. So I know it was a big event. It took me a while to recover, get back into the flow of things, get back in the routine of work. But I just want to let everybody know that the session video feed is going out. The recordings are going out. They're getting great views. I'll release all of them on my channel gradually, kind of to give people time to sort of digest it. But they're all out there if you want to go find them on different channels. I know that one of the sessions has already crossed 9,000 views. And that's just one session. There's 13 altogether. So many of them have gone over 1,000 views and are just trucking right along. So that's good news. I think that's a sign that the content that we put together was helpful to people and productive and worth people's time. One of the things I was going to announce up front is we do have the Montana Wild Conference merch store still available, still selling t-shirts and gear. I'm kind of wearing one. If I back up, maybe you can see it. Yay! Conference gear. There's even like coffee mugs and hats and some other things that I just put the word out. They're really good stuff. Let me kind of show you here. This is like a hoodie for like when it gets cooler. I'll be wearing this when it gets closer to winter. They have t-shirts, but they also have these long sleeve shirts, which are fairly nice. You can see the logo on there, and looking forward to cooler weather for that. But I was just going to say for Christmas gifts or something like that, if you really want to kind of help out the conference and the organizers and stuff, we're going to keep selling conference merch. And one of the things we have with that online store, it makes your order as you demand it. So there's no inventory or anything. It's really kind of a slick way of doing it. Kind of like the product version of print on demand books, if you're aware of that system with Amazon. But what we're going to do with that store, it's online for good. We can add more merchandise, different batch of t-shirts, different gear with each available conference as we go. So we can just keep selling all of the material from 2025, which looks great. And we can add more 2026 and 2027, et cetera, and kind of build up inventory. So if you're thinking about Christmas gifts and stuff, or if you just want to have memories of t-shirt memories. I think on the back, what do they have on the back? See if you can see that. Yes, I think we got everybody listed there. Go to our merch store, and you can find it real easily. You can do a Google search on Montana Wild Conference merch, MERCH. It'll come right up on Google search. I'll put it in the notes of this video as well. But I'd love to see other people out there wearing that and showing their memory and maybe conversation starter with people in your day-to-day lives. And I would think too, if you go to another Predators conference and you're wearing, hey, Montana Wild Conference shirts, Ask the Pastor Conference, BeyondCreationScience.com conference merch, you could have good conversations there as well. So just putting the word out there. Again, check out that. Check out the merch. There's even some other things there too that should get your attention. But we'll add more stuff as we go and develop, and that will be continuously available. Now, in my last session at the conference, The Eschatology of the Firmament, I mentioned the idea of a Montana declaration on Genesis creation. It was just kind of a harebrained thought that I had in mind to sort of like make a public statement, right? Have something that we can have in hand from this event that says, we talked about it. we listen to presentations on the eschatology of Genesis, and here's what we would say, to sort of offer an input for preterism, for the whole preterist community to look at. And we would use this Montana Declaration to circulate. And so I now have a rough draft. And what I've been doing is just sort of like laying out some basic ideas that I don't really think are that controversial. Perhaps people will push back on certain points that are involved in this Montana Declaration, but it's a rough draft. It's not a final edition. So I'll put a link in the notes here as well. But if you want to look at it, let me see if I can pull it up. Okay, so there it is. It's the Montana Declaration, and it's on Genesis creation. I explain a few things of why this declaration would be helpful in the preterist community, and then I go and make a bunch of statements that you can kind of go through. They do build on each other. They're sort of logically unfolding there, and then it comes to the conclusion. Therefore, we declare this framework should guide future preterist development. Genesis creation has an eschatology that is fulfilled in the coming and finished work of Jesus Christ and his new covenant people of God. Full stop. You can take a look at that. Like I said, it's a rough draft, and I'm open to having suggestions and what to change some language or maybe alter details. If you have ways of improving that, definitely put it in the comments here or email me at covgardens, covgardens at gmail.com. And once we get a final edition on that, I can list names. If you feel like that is really a good statement that you'd like to put your name to and sign it and digitally have your name listed, just let me know either in the comments here or an email. Again, covgardens at gmail.com. And if you want to put a title on, your name, your title, your town, something like that would be helpful. And we'll just add those names as they come in. That document has gone out to all the speakers who were at the conference, who are examining it now. It's also gone out to a wider community, and I've got a whole bunch of feedback and suggestions, and I've been making changes in real time. So every once in a while, you probably need to refresh that page, just because when I make the changes, they don't update unless you refresh the pages. So that'll get you, kind of what we have currently. And I just like to let that sit for a few days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm not in any big hurry on it. I'd like to catch any mistakes in there for sure before we finalize it. And of course, once we finalize it and you put your name on it, it won't be changed. So keep that in mind and take a look at the Montana Declaration on Genesis creation. Now, we do have some announcements. Steve and I have had a couple meetings, and we've talked to a few people about, kind of where do we go from here with this conference. And remember, this is the third conference that Steve Magwook sort of spearheaded from 2023. And then I kind of joined in with him from that first conference, and then we kind of became more like partners as it developed. But in 2023, we did the basic introduction to fulfilled prophecy. And I did some very basic introduction to covenant creation in 2023. And those sessions are all online too on our website, beyondcreationscience.com. In 2024, we had a conference title on the book of Revelation. And we just focused in on the book of Revelation and sort of had a whole mess of presentations over the long 2 days on the book of Revelation and themes from the book of Revelation. 2025, the eschatology of Genesis, we thought that was a natural next step. And we've gone through all of that. And so now we've got some ideas for the next 2 years. And let me say for 2026, what Steve and I have decided that might be the best way to do this is to alternate between St. Louis and Montana for now, because we've kind of done that. We've been in St. Louis at first, and then we've been to Montana. So we're going to go back to St. Louis for July of 2026. It'll be the first part of July, not the 4th of July weekend. It'll be after that, but kind of the same period of time. We're talking with some other people that are planning large conferences next year as well. So we're trying to coordinate enough space between the conferences that it makes it really convenient for people to take in both if they want to. So there's no conflict there. But first part of July is what we're thinking of in St. Louis. And the title that we were working on is The Eschatology of the Prophets. So you can see that how that logically flows from what we've done so far. And we really want to zoom in on the prophets and talk about the eschatology of the prophets. And in terms of fulfillment, it'll be helpful at a very basic level and see how the prophets fit into this bigger framework of Genesis creation. The book of Revelation is bookends. And now we're kind of going into the center with the eschatology of the prophets. Of course, the gospel of Jesus Christ is front and center in all of that because the fulfillment comes to its ultimate and greatest fulfillment in Jesus Christ, in the first century, in the birth of the church and the new covenant people of God. But I was thinking along the lines of that is that, you could also, we wouldn't just have to be talking about eschatology and fulfillment. We can also talk about the nature of communication that the prophets used, sort of the mindset and the aesthetic of the prophets. That's something that I would like to really dig into personally, the literature of the prophets. I mean, a lot of people don't realize this, but the prophets were poetry. They wrote Hebrew poetry. And we read that as like just straight up prose, but it's actually poetic. And that sort of communication doesn't necessarily come natural to us as modern, sort of scientific moderns. So I'd like to talk about things even like the mindset of the prophets and how they understood that the physical world is a symbol, and God communicates through these physical things in various ways. And the prophets picked up on, the various aspects of human life and experience, the natural world, the gardens, things like that they use to communicate God's word through. So there's almost like a sacramental world idea in the prophets. And I really want to pursue that because I think that's really helpful as far as Christian imagination, Christian praying imagination, Christian worldview, how you can see the gospel manifested in various parts of life just by being involved in the incarnation of what God has made for us all to enjoy and how we experience the world. But I say all that because fundamentalism, modern fundamentalism coming from the 20th century debate, fundamentalist modernist debate that we kind of live in the wake of, fundamentalism doesn't really do well with poetics and aesthetics and art in general, right? We just literal, and if you can understand why, if everything's just literal, like take the Bible literally and that's your only priority, you're going to miss like the dimensions and the layers, the artistic construction of the literature of the scripture and things like that. So I think even preterists, because we come from, a lot of us come from, I come from straight up, fundamentalist background, Bob Jones University, Bob Jones, evangelistic type things, multiple generations. So I come from that background, and I have found that the more poetics that I sort of investigate and study and sort of get used to, the better I think that the better I understand scripture, and really not just what the scriptures are saying, but how the prophets say it. And I have been blessed with the poetic dimension and the literature studies. But another aspect of the prophets we can talk about at this conference is the integrity of the prophets. That's something that not a lot of people think about. Is how does Jeremiah, in a world that is dominated by national politics, right? You have Israel trying to make alliances with Egypt, to protect themselves against Babylon. They're trying to, intermarry with the nations to get, like, if you marry the daughter of a king over here, then anybody that's going to pick a fight with you and start a war with you is going to pick a fight with them. And they were relying on all of these political machinations to protect the national identity and to protect themselves. They had decided that they were going to make politics their bulwark and their protection. Keep Israel great forever. I know that's a little controversial, but the integrity of the prophets they would come up in the middle of that cultural setting and say, it won't work. Why? Because it's unfaithfulness to God. God had already told Israel, when you get a king, don't multiply your horses, don't build up a big army, rely on me, live by faith. That was Israel's message from the beginning. And you can understand how, all of those relationships with the nations and the idolatry that went along with that was presented by the prophets as adultery on Israel's part. They had fornicated with the nations. I mean, that's not a very popular message in their day, but that integrity of the prophets is inspiring to me. And I've read some books on, kind of just like just history and bios of the prophets as best we can understand. Eugene Peterson has one that's just fabulous. It's called Run with the Horses on the Life of Jeremiah. And I recommend that book all the time because it's just, man, it just opens up a view of the life of Jeremiah and what he dealt with, what his message was in the context that it was, and how he delivered that message, without compromise, in all love, even to the point of, going, possibly tradition says that Jeremiah went with, a lot of the captives to Egypt as well. So I can't remember all the details about that, but it's just fascinating. And there's a lot of historical stuff that, it's debatable historically what actually happened. But so that's going to be our announcement for 2026. And we think that it really does flow directly into the next step of what we've done. And I think that there's going to be a limit to how many people we can keep in that building. So once we do make that announcement and start selling tickets, you're going to want to get tickets pretty fast if you want to come to St. Louis, because I suspect after the success we had here in Montana, there's going to be a lot of interest, and there's going to be more visitors and more people that are going to try to come to the Ask the Pastor BeyondCreationScience.com conference. So keep that in mind. We do have, let me back up there. By going back to St. Louis, it makes it easier to access. That was one of the biggest concerns about the Montana conference. We had a number of people who attended St. Louis in 2023 and 2024 that just really they couldn't swing what we were pulling off in Montana due to the fact that it was a weekday conference, and the amount of money and time it takes to plan a trip to Montana in various ways. So one of the things we're going to do is go back to St. Louis and make it easier for those individuals or other people that live closer on the East Coast, live closer in the center part of the country, to make it really convenient. And we have also invited a total of 7 speakers again. I can say that. I won't say names because there's no commitments yet that we have for sure. But the 7 speakers that we have invited, some of them are the same ones who are here in Montana, and a number of them will be new speakers for the first time. So stay tuned for that. It's pretty exciting. And then for 2027, we'll alternate back to Montana. Again, it'll be similar, probably in calendar time, second half of July, probably associated with the Frontier Days Whitehall celebration, because I know a lot of the attendees stayed that Saturday and went to the rodeo, went to the parties, went to the parade. My daughter sang the national anthem to open ceremonies there, and it was kind of cool. But that just gives you another option for things to do in Montana, along with everything else: the fishing, the hiking, the sightseeing, the museums, the old historic district in Butte, golfing. I heard somebody went golfing in Anaconda, which is that's really special. That golf course is very famous. But so 2027, we don't have a topic nailed down for 2027. I was kind of thinking along the lines of creation and the second Genesis, where we can get into the Gospels and see how creation themes and motifs and typology comes to its fulfillment in the arrival of Christ, who is, the new creation. So possibly creation and the second Genesis. And that would be kind of a development on preterist work that's already been done about the second Exodus, right? That was one of the aspects of one of my presentations. If we have a greater second Exodus in the New Testament, then it should be not that hard to understand that Jesus, the arrival of Messiah and the fulfillment of the law and the prophets, we would have a second Genesis. And that was kind of what I was getting at with some of my presentation. But So that's what we've got in mind. As far as follow-up conference videos, we're going to get together with the speakers. I think what we're doing is letting everybody kind of have time to sort of digest the video recordings. I mean, 13 sessions is going to take somebody to, some time to go through that, especially if they don't have very much free time. So we'll let another week or two go by probably, and then we'll have some speakers get together, maybe do some question and answer period, some follow up from the conference, some discussion of material that was presented at the conference. We are thinking about that. That's going to happen as well. Just to give us some time to develop that. And one more item here too is that these conferences do take some money. We're going to sell tickets that'll help cover a lot of the costs of the upcoming St. Louis conference. But we are always open to taking donations now in order to prepare for and sort of bankroll the planning, the travel arrangements, some of the purchasing of food as we get closer into 2026 organization. But anything that you would like to donate, if you found the Montana Wild Conference 2025 helpful, if you want to support the future, all the donations now would go toward 2026 and the expenses that are be involved in that. But I just throw that out there because we didn't really pass the hat at the conference. My goal with the conference was really investment. My goal was to get people together to talk about Genesis creation issues in the context of fulfilled prophecy. And and I didn't, the whole thing was about looking toward the future of the preterist movement and how can we do some disciplined discussion, disciplined study, disciplined presentations to sort of work through some of those issues that have been very controversial and have been kind of created a lot of heat over the years. So my thought about the whole thing was just an investment. We have the session presentations; they're going to be used for I don't know how long, for years, for decades. So we feel like we got a great bang for our buck as far as the money side of things. But we will take donations if you're interested. Just contacting me either in the comments here about how to do that or by email covgardens@gmail.com. But I want to say thank you to everybody. I was blown away by how many people were able to make it to Montana and do all of the activities, the fishing, the hiking, and the sightseeing that this place offers. It's a beautiful place, and hopefully, if you saw the pictures, if you weren't able to make it, you saw the pictures, you saw the discussion, maybe you can plan for next time. But I do think there's going to be a limit on how many tickets we're going to be able to sell and the number of the crowd that we can handle. So when we start making those announcements, don't wait, jump right on it and make your plans. But thank you again. One more thing, if you like these videos and the work that we're doing on covenant creation on YouTube, please like them and subscribe. I'm just almost to 1,000 subscribers, and that blows my mind. I think it was at like 995 or 993 or something like that. But I would love to get over 1,000 subscribers on this channel after the last year and a half plus of kind of hobby work when I have time. So subscribe and help me get over that hump. But I appreciate you all. I have a lot of things in mind for future release here too, and some more development on the theology and worldview and practical application of covenant creation. So thank you again for your time. Blessings. See you next time.